on Ashford Street. The night pharmacy keeps a soft bell and a reliable light. Every Tuesday after dusk, the receipt printer adds one quiet line, 80. No unit, no alarm. Only a number that seems to wait for me to understand. Entry 1, Monday, early spring. The bell that rings twice. The pharmacy door carries a small sign in tidy letters. Please ring twice, then wait. Monday obeys without being told. I came in for tea and bandages and the kind of advice that does not scold. Marina Holloway runs the counter with patience you can fold and take home. She rang up my items, and the receipt behaved like an ordinary paper. No extra line. No mysterious number. The bell on the door chimed once when I left, then again for the person behind me, which is how bells teach cooperation. Outside, Ashford Street laid out a damp evening like a new tablecloth. Willowbrook Café threw a rectangle of light across the sidewalk. Tom Aldridge lifted the chalkboard and wrote today, tea without sugar in large letters that looked like they trusted us. I counted the steps back to Cedar Lane Apartments. 17 from the corner to the lobby. The elevator hummed and opened to the landing that does not brag about its patience. I slept with the window cracked, and the block proofread my dreams. Monday is when you measure the room, so the week remembers your size. The pharmacy knew my name and my tendency to worry. The receipt spoke in prices only. No, 80. I wrote it down, because absence is a kind of data. Entry 2, Tuesday, just after dusk, the first 80. On Tuesday the bell sounded a shade brighter, as if it had polished itself for accuracy. The window stacked reflections of trams and faces into a sort of polite collage. Marina smiled the way steady jobs teach you to smile, with the corners and with your shoulders. I handed over a short list, tea, a notebook, a small fabric marker, and a packet of patience disguised as adhesive bandages. The receipt printer purred. The paper curled like a good answer. At the bottom, below the totals and courtesy, one word arrived, 80. Marina saw it and nodded to herself, then looked at me. Will you wait 80 seconds before making your next decision? She asked, as if she were granting me a coupon for thought. It does this on Tuesdays. She circled the word with a pencil and passed the paper back. 80 of what? I asked. 80 is a pause, she said. Not a dose. She tapped the counter with the pencil, and the sound was smaller than rain. The system has an old habit. On Tuesdays it reminds people to count to 80 out loud or in their chest. It is not medical. It is civic. I stood aside so the next person could step forward with their tired hope. I counted quietly under my breath. At 60, the door chimed once. At 70, a child laughed in the alley as if someone had surrendered a stick. At 80, I knew that I did not need to argue with the tram schedule. I thanked Marina and left before my gratitude turned into a speech. At Willowbrook, I showed Tom the receipt. He wrote on the chalkboard, today's special, 80 breath TA, and underlined the hyphen so people could pronounce their patience. People drank slower. The bell near the register sounded like a sentence that prefers commas. Entry 3, Tuesday later, how the number travels. The 80 did not stay on the receipt. It moved through the neighborhood like a polite rumor. Elena Whitmore at the bakery set a timer and told me bread prefers 80 seconds of silence before it decides not to fall. David Blackwood, our superintendent at Cedar Lane, posted a note in the stairwell. If you are carrying for someone else, wait 80 at the landing. He stood beside the note with a screwdriver that sings and said, people do not trip after 80. They choose differently. Back at the pharmacy, a delivery driver carried a crate of amber bottles to the counter and said, should I ring twice or 80? Marina said, both. And the driver laughed in the way people laugh when they recognize a rule that does not punish. The machine behind the counter beeped once like a practice apology. The receipt printer slept until called. I tested the numbers used by walking to the tram and reading the schedule with less urgency. 80 seconds later, the driver adjusted the ramp for a stroller that had been waiting bravely. The ramp's hinge made a gentle noise like a hinge that had decided to be a friend. I rode one stop, counted again, then walked back to Willowbrook as if carrying a bowl that should not spill. On the counter, Tom placed a band of paper around a handful of quarters. The band read return when ready in pencil. I took the coins and the band together, because Tuesday had taught me to carry verbs. The bell on the cafe door let the day in and out without commentary. Entry 4, Wednesday, early, without units, without panic. Wednesday morning, I returned to the pharmacy to see if the number held. It did not print. The receipt returned to its ordinary talents. 80 comes only on Tuesdays, Marina said, ringing me up for tea without sugar and a box of pencils that pretend to be brave. But you can carry it if you like. She wrote 80 small on a sticky note and stuck it on the inside of the door, above the latch, where only the person leaving would see it. The note looked like a blessing that chose to be secondary. A man at the counter asked a complicated question and searched his pockets for proof. Marina listened the way people listen when they have practiced, with attention that does not lean too hard. She said, "Give me 80. And the man counted out loud with a grateful politeness that improved the room's air. He found the paper at 36. He found his comma at 50. He found a better question at 62. By 80, he needed nothing except the small brown bag and a sentence. "Thank you for your patience," which he meant. I walked to the library and showed Anna the receipt from Tuesday. She drew a tiny circle in the margin beside a paragraph about pauses. "We are building a neighborhood with measurements that prefer breadth," she said. "I will add a page to the library ledger for people returning 80 they did not use." The ledger already held categories like stray pencils found and courtesies lent. We added a line, 80, and used, returned for later. On the way home, the elevator at Cedar Lane opened to the landing between 1 and 2. It offered me a chance to count before deciding whether to ride. I counted to 80. The car stayed and did not feel insulted. Machines appreciate being included in good arithmetic. Entry 5, Thursday, late. Errors that did not harm anyone. On Thursday night, I watched Marina calibrate the digital scale. Numbers flirted with accuracy and then committed. She printed a test strip and it read 80 in small letters where a unit should have been. "Old software," she said, tapping the edge of the printer, "and older habits. It does this to remind us to double-check." She circled the line and drew a tiny arrow. "We train new staff with it. On Tuesdays it trains the block." A woman came in with a list that had been rained on. The ink bloomed like a startled flower. She held it carefully as if apologies could be wrung from paper. Marina gave her a dry copy and a pen that writes with calm. 80 seconds at the counter, Marina said. "Decide again." The woman stood aside, read, and crossed out one item with relief that did not require a crowd to witness it. Tom arrived balancing a tray labeled tea without sugar and chair. The chair was folded and leaned against the counter like a sentence waiting for a verb. He set the tea down and said, "We have a special for people who remember to count." Marina put the chair in a corner where Tuesday evenings expand. The receipt printer purred, then slept again as if resting for its weekly performance. Before closing, Marina used a date stamp on a small stack of forms. The stamp made a muffled thump that sounded like promises being made orderly. I cleaned the counter with the cloth kept for careful jobs. The bell, when we left, insisted on its 2 notes, and then let the street reclaim the evening. Entry 6, Friday, mid-morning, the chalk circle. Friday morning, the sign on the door had acquired a chalk circle around the word twice. Someone had added a small arrow and 3 dots, the neighborhood's way of agreeing quietly. Marina did not erase it. She tapped the circle once with her finger, and the chalk agreed to be patient. David stopped by to return a screwdriver he had borrowed from himself, which is to say he found the right size. He left a note that read hinge on 2 sings, which is fine. He drew a tiny treble clef because stairs have music. The pharmacy knows it is part of the building's orchestra. I counted to 80 while waiting for a delivery. I used other people's names instead of numbers, the way one might count a blessing with faces. "Marina," I said at 1. "Tom," at 2. "Anna," at 3. "David," at 4. "Elena," at 5. The rhythm helped the room stay hospitable. When the delivery arrived, nothing had spoiled. No one had apologized more than once. The bell had said just what bells should say, and no more. Later, at Willowbrook, Tom wrote on the chalkboard, 80 is a chair. People looked at it and sat in their own ways. A woman read the board, then let 2 teenagers cut ahead for reasons that were not her job to explain. A man stood aside and watched his impatience turn into a neutral coat he could hang on a hook. The chalkboard approves of Tuesdays, even on Fridays. Entry 7, Saturday, after rain. The mistaken unit. Saturday invited confusion as a test. A new customer misunderstood the 80 and asked if it was a dose. Marina shook her head, and explained that we do not use the number for medicine. It is not medical advice, she said. It is a good habit. Please trust what your doctor wrote, and give yourself 80 before deciding how to carry it. The man sighed, then laughed at his own readiness to panic. He took the little bag, and the chair by the window folded itself correctly around his decision. In the afternoon, Anna brought by a thin book with a pencil line under a sentence. Numbers are furniture for the day. We read the line aloud. It worked on the room like fragrance that had chosen not to be overwhelming. On my way home, I counted 80 in steps, carefully, on Ashford Street's flatter parts. At 72, a tourist asked for Willowbrook and the bell answered for me. At Cedar Lane, I paused at the landing and remembered Tuesday's chalk circle. I added 3 tiny dots beside it, not to decorate, but to offer the next person a small place to begin. Entry 8, Sunday, late. Inversion, the number without the day. Sunday night the pharmacy closed early so Marina could attend to her own life. The receipt printer slept. The bell took a nap. Yet the number kept working across the street. At Willowbrook, Tom placed a small sign on the counter. 80 for explanations. If anyone began a complicated justification, he would point gently to the sign and pour tea without sugar. People edited themselves in real time. A conversation about whether a soup deserved its name ended at 80 with everyone still friends. At the library, Anna added a box to the ledger labeled Pauses Lent. People wrote entries that did not ask for applause. Lent 80 to a stranger at the tram. Borrowed 80 from a kind window. Returned 80 and used because the day learned to behave. The city likes to be told that it passed a test it did not know was scheduled. I realized that Tuesday was not about Tuesday. It was about granting a consistent place for patients to sit once a week so that other days could recognize it. The 80 is a loan, not a law. The inversion settled into my chest like a chair that looks flimsy and is not. I slept with the receipt on my table so the number could stand watch over Tuesday's echo. Entry 9, late Tuesday, after midnight, the long count. A week later the Tuesday, 80, returned as promised. The receipt curled like a comma. Marina circled the number with the pencil that knows how to underline without bruising the paper. It helps me too, she admitted. 80 seconds after a difficult conversation, I remember where the tea lives. We both counted quietly while the door chimed for someone carrying a small emergency and a long story. When the story ended, the emergency was smaller and the room remained gentle. I carried the receipt to Willowbrook and placed it under the jar of change bands. Tom added a new band that read "You owe me 80, meaning a story, a pause, a kindness I have not offered yet. People took the bands as if they were tokens to a ride that does not pretend to be dangerous. The bell learned the rhythm for a door held for exactly the right amount of time. Back at Cedar Lane, the elevator opened not to the floor I had asked for, but to the landing that prefers diplomacy. I let the doors close and counted to 80. When they opened again, they were correct and pleased with themselves. Machines appreciate the chance to be in the right. I placed 3 chalk dots on the wall, not as decoration, but as punctuation. The stairwell is a sentence. We are its clause. Entry 10, Wednesday, early summer. Soft closing. How to carry 80. The last entry does not ask to be profound. The receipt is ordinary paper again. The bell rings twice. The digital scale shows numbers that fit their boxes and their responsibilities. The city performs its small duties with less adrenaline and more dignity. I carry 80 without waiting for Tuesday. I use it before answering questions that arrive as if they were emergencies. I use it when the tram is late and my temper wants to practice theater. I use it when someone in front of me forgets their wallet and the line becomes a lesson in grace. I have learned to speak to rooms. I place my hand on the counter and let the surface remind me that what was a tree and plastic was a plan, and glass is patient even when attacked by fingerprints. I count to 80 and the day returns to the pace it can keep. I leave the pharmacy as if the next person is already a friend. On the way out, I write in my diary, 80 is not a dose. It is a chair. I underline chair because it deserves it. Closing. If you find yourself at the Ashford Street pharmacy on a Tuesday night and your receipt whispers 80, treat it kindly. Count with names or breaths or lines on the tile. By the time you reach 80, the thing you were about to do will have decided whether it truly belongs to you. The bell will ring twice for whoever needs to arrive next. The city will adjust its hinge and not ask for credit. Return the chair when you are ready. Tag. Count to 80. Return the chair. Appendix. Field notes on Tuesdays 80 for polite readers of rooms. 1. What 80 is not. It is not medical advice. It does not replace a doctor's judgment. It is not a pill you can split or a dose you can improvise. It is a pause and a courtesy, printed by an old machine with a good memory. 2. How to count. Use names you trust, or windows, or the number of letters in your favorite sentence. Whisper if the room is tired. Count out loud if embarrassment will help someone else breathe. 3. Where to stand. Stand by the chair, by the door, or at the corner of the counter where the wood has learned the weight of patience. Do not block the aisle. People add up too. 4. What to do if the receipt forgets to print the word. Write 80 in pencil on the margin of your list. Fold the corner. Hand the pause to the next person without explaining the math. Explanations are chairs too, but some chairs are for later. 5. What to return. Return the band around your quarters with a sentence written on it. Return the chalk to the stairwell by marking only what you are willing to follow. Return the chair to its corner. Return silence to a room that did not ask for your performance. 6. When to stop counting. Stop at 80. Do not bargain for 81 or 79. The number exists because meaning prefers to curb its enthusiasm. If you need more, take another 80 and call it a second chair. 7. If the bell rings once, someone needs a little less ritual. Smile and shorten your ceremony, but keep its shape. 8. If the bell rings 3 times by accident, forgive the bell. Bells are humans with better acoustics. 9. When Tuesday migrates. If a Wednesday feels like a Tuesday because urgency has been overfed, adopt 80 temporarily. Notify the chalk with 3 dots. Machines like paperwork even when it is metaphor. 10. How to teach the rule. Do not lecture. Offer tea without sugar. Show the receipt. Draw a circle around the word with a soft pencil. Hand over the pencil. People like to hold their own pauses. 11. What to write in the library ledger. 80. And used. Returned for later. Or 80. Borrowed. Spent on a tram ramp. Or 80. Shared. The line survived. 12. What to do when your name prints beside the number. It sometimes happens. Accept the errand of rest. Sit on the chair. Drink water. Let someone else carry the verb. 13. What to do if someone mocks the ritual. Count for them anyway. Place the chair where it belongs and step aside. The point is not to win, but to leave the room kinder than you found it. 14. What to do with leftover lint. Press it into a small square. Set it beside the marker so the next person can imagine the pause as something that catches what the day sheds. 15. What to do if the number scares you. Replace it with the word later. Later is 80, translated into hope. 16. Signs that the pause worked. The voice next to you softens. The hinge on 2 stops biting. The tram driver sees the stroller before the stroller has to ask. The bell learns your rhythm. 17. Why 17 shows up anyway. Because neighborhoods enjoy favorite numbers. 17 ticks of a date stamp sound like dignity. 17 steps to the landing offer the right height for breathing. Let your 80 borrow their confidence. 18. What to call this? Not a superstition. Not a rule. Call it a chair. Chairs deserve names. Numbers deserve chairs. Addenda. Case notes from the counter, observed across several Tuesdays. Case 1. The envelope. A man arrived with an envelope half-sealed and a mind half-made. He asked 3 different questions with the same fearful melody. Marina listened, then slid a small timer across the counter and set it to 80 without clicking loudly. We counted in breath and stillness. At 50, he opened the envelope and removed a photograph of a child holding a paper crown. At 72, he sighed and folded the photograph so the crown showed. At 80, he said, I will choose the smaller path, which is not medicine and is still a cure. He thanked the bell when he left. The bell answered twice as requested. Case 2. The Tuesday that fell on a Thursday. A storm broke the schedule into polite pieces. Power hiccuped. The street lost its rhythm and chose a new one. On Thursday evening, the receipt printer produced the little word anyway, as if it had found Tuesday hiding inside the rain. We can borrow today's patience for yesterday's mistake, Marina said. People obeyed. Willowbrook changed the chalkboard to This is Tuesday enough. The tram driver practiced the ramp twice, and nobody minded the rehearsal. Case 3. The return that needed no witness. A woman placed a small brown bag on the counter, and said she had changed her mind. Marina nodded and said, 80, and the woman stayed by the door, watching people breathe. After the count, she took the bag back, lighter though it weighed the same. It is not for me tonight, she said. The bell opened its throat and sang 2 notes that sounded like dignity. Case 4, the wrong line at the right time. I once added the number to a conversation that did not want it. A young man argued with his reflection in the door window. I said, 80 helps, and he shook his head, which is allowed in a free neighborhood. I counted silently anyway, not as a command, but as a hope. By 60 his shoulders dropped. By 80 the reflection had become a person again. He bought water and said thank you the way people say a word they have not used in months. Case 5, the dose that remained a dose. A prescription arrived with numbers that meant something other than furniture. Marina checked it twice, once with eyes and once with the phone that tells the right century. The dose stayed the dose. 80 did not apply to it. She told me later. Our ritual must never pretend to be a doctor. We put the chair by the window anyway. Someone sat. The room stayed safe. Field notes, bells, stamps, and screens. The doorbell. 2 notes when asked. 1 when no one needs assistance. 3 when a hand is heavier than it believes. The date stamp. 17 thumps to straighten a stack of papers into a promise. The barcode scanner. A small red thread of light tracing effort into order. The receipt printer. A purr before the cut. A snap that sounds like a confident period. Screens behave differently on Tuesdays. The cursor blinks slower, as if restraining its impatience. The digital scale shows tiny ghosts of numbers the way lakes remember boats. When the system prints 80, the font seems rounder, a little more human. It may be the same font. I do not want to be corrected. Manual. How to count to 80 without numbers. Method 1. Name the windows on Ashford Street, in order of bravery. Method 2. Recite the table of contents of your favorite book using only the verbs. Method 3. Count the number of breaths it takes for the bell's echo to leave the door and return as silence. Method 4. Walk your fingers along the counter's grain, 1 ridge per thought. Method 5. Fold a napkin in half, then in half again, and tell yourself that patience is surface area. If someone asks what you are doing, say, I am waiting until I am kinder, and smile like you believe it. Vignettes, small Tuesdays inside other days. At Willowbrook, a child dropped a spoon and looked ready to apologize forever. Tom said, give me 80 and I will forget. And by 70 the child laughed. On Cedar Lane, a neighbor waited at the landing while another tested a new cane. We counted with our shoulders. The landing counted with the air. The library printer jammed on a grant application. Anna unplugged it, counted to 80, and the paper forgave the rollers. She wrote in the ledger, 80, spent on paper, refunded in calm. Observations on 17 and 80. 17 organizes space, steps, stamps. The acceptable number of chairs before a room becomes a meeting. 80 organizes time, breaths, decisions, the stretch between a feeling and a choice. They are cousins who respect each other's jobs. On a good day, they invite each other to work. The stairwell borrows 80 at the landing. The pharmacy borrows 17 when the line needs shape. A letter I did not send, draft found in my notebook. Dear future tenant of Cedar Lane and future customer of the Ashford Street Pharmacy. On Tuesdays the receipt prints 80. It will tempt you to perform patience or to ignore it. Try neither. Use it quietly. If you cannot count that high, count to 17 4 times and then once more. If you cannot bear the quiet, read the labels on the tea boxes and choose the one with the shortest ingredients. If you do not like tea, hold the door instead. Remember to clean the lint trap of your temper. Night register. Sounds between 1 and 2. From the stairwell, I can hear the pharmacy when the block learns to share acoustics. The bell travels the pipe chase and arrives as a faint promise. The scanner's beep becomes a firefly. The receipt cutter becomes a knife in a kitchen that is careful. The elevator hums a note that matches the scale calibrating. Sometimes the building holds its breath for a long second, and in that second, all the small machines agree to be colleagues rather than competitors. The long Tuesday, a full itinerary. Morning, wake before alarms, boil water, choose a cup that will not frighten tea. Count to 80 while steam writes on the window. Late morning, walk Ashford Street at the speed of a thoughtful dog. Return a library book early because the margin note told you to. Afternoon, Help Tom rewrite the chalkboard so 80 does not look like a threat. Draw a chair beside the word. Dusk. Arrive at the pharmacy with empty hands. Purchase less than you can carry with one hand. Thank the counter for staying level. Evening. Count to 80 for a stranger without telling them you have begun. If they notice, include them. If they do not, include them anyway. Night. Place the receipt on your desk. Circle the word in pencil. Sleep with the window cracked. Let the city proofread your dreams. Instruction for the bell, found taped under the counter. If someone rings once and looks ashamed, ring yourself a second time. If someone rings 3 by mistake, forgive them with silence. If the door will not cooperate, sing your 2 notes anyway. Tuesday requires ceremony. A conversation with Marina about old machines. The receipt printer is not wise, she said, but it is good at rehearsing the moment when we do not rush. She cleaned the glass on the counter with a cloth that had a name written on it in small letters. I learned this from a mentor who told me to hear the pharmacy as music. When the rhythm breaks, I ask for 80 and the orchestra returns. I asked if the number ever caused trouble. Only when someone wants it to fix something it cannot fix, she said. We offer chairs, not ladders. The day my name printed beside the number. It arrived without trying to impress me. The word, 80, then my first name, tidy and unhurried. Marina looked at it and placed the chair by the window. Rest, she said. I can do the counting. I sat with a glass of water and permitted the room to function without me narrating it. 2 people thanked me for nothing, which is to say they were thanking the chair. By the time I reached 80, slowly, guiltily, then gratefully, I could remember how to say yes without making it a performance. The printer purred once as if satisfied that machines can mentor humans without condescension. How to lend your 80. Offer to hold a place in line for a parent carrying a child who has given up on shoes. Read a label out loud when eyes are tired and hands are full. Stand a half step back so another person can see the price without asking. Bring a chair from the corner without waiting to be noble. Answer a question with "we can decide in 80 instead of now." If the person declines, keep the count. Declining is part of the ritual. It does not cancel it. Notes on tea without sugar. Tom says his sugar tempts people to believe in instant relief. Tea without sugar reminds the mouth that subtlety exists. On Tuesdays, the special reads 80 breath TA. It costs what tea costs. The receipt sometimes prints 80 under that line like a joke that is not cruel. People laugh and then sip slower. That is most of the work. Catalog of gentle mistakes and their remedies. Saying, I will be quick, and then being human. Remedy, 80. Reading a label as if it were written against you. Remedy, ask Marina to read it too. Accusing the bell of sarcasm. Remedy, ring twice and apologize to gravity. Thinking the number is a test you can fail. Remedy, write it on a sticky note and move on. Trying to teach the ritual with a shout. Remedy, hand someone a chair. Postscript, when I move away, if I do. I will visit on Tuesdays, even if only in my head. I will count while waiting for elevators that do not know Cedar Lane's landing. I will walk into a pharmacy with a bell that is younger and ask permission to ring twice. I will carry a pencil and write 80 in a small circle on the back of a receipt when I need to lend myself a chair. If the clerk asks why, I will say, I am waiting until I am kinder, and hope they believe me enough to let me try. Coda, 4 small evenings. 1. A tram driver waited for a late runner whose umbrella had mutinied. We counted to 80 with our eyes on the door. He made it at 76 and thanked the floor. 2. The library closed early for a repair. Anna wrote 80 on the door with chalk, and people forgave the sign without muttering. 3. A neighbor left a note. If you need my 80, take it. The note did not explain where to return it. We returned it by taking it and acting better. 4. I dreamed the bell rang twice and then waited for me to choose the second note. I chose it slowly. The city approved. Manual for borrowing a Tuesday for other streets. Step 1. Find a bell that will not mind being asked twice. If you have none, use a knuckle on wood and be gentle. Step 2. Print 80 on a slip of paper with pencil. Circle it softly. Distance yourself from the drama of ink. Step 3. Place a chair near a window. Windows supervise humans kindly. Step 4. Announce nothing. Rituals dislike microphones. Step 5. When someone arrives nervous, lend them your count. If they do not accept, keep counting until your own nerves stop performing. Step 6. Clean something small. Ritual prefers action to confession. Step 7. Let the number migrate to other rooms once it learns the map. A tram will adopt it. A cafe will translate it. A library will archive it. Step 8. Retire it for a day when pride grows loud. Rituals deserve rest. Almanac of Tuesdays, selected entries. Early spring. The first crocus by the pharmacy step opened as if it had been waiting for a number. People counted with their mouths closed so as not to blow the petals away. Late spring. A bicycle bell harmonized with the doorbell, and 2 children bowed, as if conducting. High summer. The receipt curled tighter from the heat, and still produced the word in tidy letters that did not sweat. Someone placed a fan near the counter. It turned slowly like the minute hand on a good clock. Early autumn. The chalk grew bolder in the damp, and the circle around twice looked like a moon that understood paperwork. Late October. The number replaced a complaint about the wind. People accepted coats as friends instead of arguments. Early winter. Gloves made counting harder and therefore purer. Someone knitted a fingerless pair for Marina so she could tap keys without rushing. Interview with a bell, imagined, accurate anyway. Why 2 notes? Because 1 feels like a command and 3 feels like panic. 2 is a handshake. Do you enjoy Tuesdays? I enjoy being used correctly. When a room becomes ceremony, my metal remembers its or. What do you do when people ignore you? I wait. I am trained for waiting. Humans are improvisers. Bells are structure. What would you tell a person who refuses to count? Open the door. Close the door. Practice my notes and see if your heart forgives you for hurrying. 17 ways to use 80, none of them medical. 1. Before replying to a message that presses all your buttons. 2. Before correcting a stranger who did not ask for schooling. 3. Before you add sugar you do not want. 4. Before you say, I will be quick. 5. Before you move a chair someone placed for a reason. 6. Before you dismiss a sign because the font is ugly. 7. Before you despair of the tram, the weather, or your neighbor's taste in music. 8. Before you call something a glitch when it might be a tradition. 9. Before you assume that printed words are smarter than patient people. 10. Before you reach for a ladder when a chair will do. 11. Before you make a face at the bell. 12. Before you mistake urgency for importance. 13. Before you offer advice to someone carrying a story you do not know. 14. Before you underestimate a Tuesday. 15. Before you hold the door so long you become a martyr. 16. Before you hoard a pause instead of sharing it. 17. Before you ask for more than you can return. Letter from chalk, on the doorframe. I am dust that learn a line. I like circles because they look like patience you can draw. Do not rub me away unless you are ready to replace me. I forgive smudges. I record only what you mean to keep. If rain takes me, put me back. I belong to Tuesdays. I visit Fridays. Willowbrook Addendum, the ledger of slow. Tom keeps a small notebook under the counter labeled slow. People write in it when the day has been improved by underperforming on purpose. Let the kettle rest after boiling. Tea persuaded me to speak more kindly. Counted to 80 and left a seat for someone I would have missed otherwise. Waited before sending the email. Sent nothing. Felt taller. Sat in the chair and did not treat rest as debt. When the notebook fills, Tom does not archive it. He tears out the pages and folds paper boats. On rainy evenings, children sail them through the curb streams. Slow does not need a museum. Correspondence with Anna about numbers. Anna writes that numbers keep libraries honest. 17 shelves per bay feels trustworthy. 80 days for a loan feels indulgent. She underlined feels. Numbers are manners, she wrote. They teach us when to speak and how to leave room for other voices. I took her letter to the pharmacy and read it to Marina during a lull. Marina added, and when to stop speaking. We counted to 80 and then served the next person who had already decided to be reasonable. A map of Ashford Street by sounds. At the corner, tram bells promise and then forgive. At Willowbrook, the chalk squeaks like a mouse with ideas. At the pharmacy, the scale hums the note between effort and success. At Cedar Lane, the landing keeps the air at a polite angle. Between them, footsteps sign their names. Tuesdays are not louder. They are arranged. Closing epilogue. A Tuesday without print. 1 week the receipt printer ran out of paper. The little box did not know how to tell us. The room itself adopted the job. People pointed to the chair and nodded. Marina touched the counter twice with a pencil. Tom wrote 80 on the chalkboard without flourishes. Anna placed the ledger on the window ledge with the page open to pause as lent. David tightened the hinge on 2 and then did not test it immediately. We all counted anyway. At 80, nothing dramatic happened. The absence felt correct. The day folded itself and went to sleep.